Folks, Chaplain Trimble. It's Monday. You can tell I've changed clothes. Thanks for joining us for this small group study and for looking with me into the book of Ephesians, chapter 5. You no doubt read our text, starting with verse 1, going through verse 14, I believe it was. I want to ask you a question as we get started. When have you been in a conversation that just slowly edged toward not so clean? Or you've had the opportunity to visit with somebody and the conversation slid from just simple talking into gossip. I found a scripture. In fact, it is Kay Love's scripture of the day today. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 33 says, "Do not be deceived. Bad company ruins good morals. Wake up from your drunken stupor, as is right, and do not go on sinning. For some have no knowledge of God. I say this to your shame." Paul, the writer there to the Corinthian believers, is reminding them of the importance of spending time with good company rather than bad. And as we looked at the text this week in Paul's writing in Ephesians, he reminded us to be imitators of God. In this context, perhaps, imitators of Paul, imitators of Christ. And we looked at the importance of our walk with Christ. I shared with you on Sunday the necessity of walking in love. So I ask a question, what does it mean to walk in love? What does that look like in your life? What does it look like in your neighborhood? What does it mean to walk in love with those around you? Second thing I talked about was what to walk away from, and then what to walk toward. We have to walk away from something in order to walk toward something else. And in the things we're to walk away from, Paul talked about not only improper behavior, sexual immorality, but he talked about the importance of not being impure and not being idolaters, and the importance of not even talking about some of the things. So good grief, how easy it is for us to talk about some things we shouldn't talk about. What type of foolish talking do you need to be called away from? Something for us to think about. How do your friends and family know you are a believer? See, we imitate those around us. As the 1 Corinthians 15:33 passage said, bad company corrupts good morals. How often are we around those that we begin to speak like them, think like them, do the things that they do? It's so easy on your computer late at night with advertisements on the left or the right to just a click away. I was talking with a friend yesterday about the importance of, even on our government computers, when you scroll down on MSN, that's the homepage, there are those news stories that are less than holy or wholesome. How do you demonstrate the love of Christ to people around you? How do you demonstrate that to someone who doesn't go to church or chapel? How do you demonstrate that to someone who is less than kind? How are you demonstrating that in chapel? It's not merely a going once a week and saying I've been. It's a matter of becoming involved. What items or habits are tempting you in your cookie jar of life? The illustration I had of the cookie jar. I had some people come up after service and lift the lid to see what was in there. Of course, there was nothing in there. But how we are tempted to lift the lid of the cookie jar just a little at a time, just to get a see, just to get a peek, just to get a smell, just to get a taste. And then we're quickly taken away from that. I noted in the flyleaf of my Bible some things that I want us to think about in our small group this week. Intentionality, regularity, and perspective. If I am going to walk like Christ, if I'm going to ward off my evil behavior or ward off those things that are not Christ-like, I have to be intentional. Intentional with my reading, intentional with my study, intentional with my accountability partner, intentional with prayer, intentional with attending that fellowship that keeps me where I should be. Regularly, just like exercise, I have to regularly buffet my body and keep it under subjection, Paul would say, in order to do what I must do. I have to regularly exercise if I'm going to pass a PT test. I have to regularly exercise if I'm going to do a 2-hour half marathon or less. It takes regular exercise. It takes the same regularity if we're to be followers of Christ. So I ask you, are you regularly doing what it takes, applying spiritual disciplines to be a follower of Christ? The last thing I noted there in the flyleaf of my Bible was perspective. We all fail. I'm the biggest of failures. I, just like everyone else, am subject to temptation, and oftentimes I give in to those temptations and don't do right. Perspective. God calls us as believers to walk in Him, live through Him, live by Him. He is in us. So it's in Him, as Acts 16:33 says, we live and move and have our being. In Him. Even though we fail, even though we make mistakes, even though we falter, even though we come up short sometimes. Paul in this letter is talking about those that are regular practicers, those that have kind of forsaken the calling of God and are now following completely the things of the world. When we have a consistent, committed, continuous relationship with Christ, and we look at things from Christ's perspective, we see, yes, we may make mistakes, but we are growing in Him, becoming more like Him, maturing in Him. Hey, thanks for joining us for this small group study. Hope you have a great time. Enjoy it. Pray for each other. See you again on Sunday. Bye now.